Hi everyone, Brea here from Actuarial, and in today's video I'm going to be going through 11 questions that any aspiring actuary will want to know about. So if you're an aspiring actuary, keep watching till the end because you're definitely going to want to learn everything that I have to say in this video. These questions have actually been asked to me by someone who is an aspiring actuary. His name's Eric, and he sent me these questions because he just wants to know all the details about becoming an actuary and everything that he should expect along the way so that he knows what to expect and he's well prepared. So before we get into this, I just want you to remember that if you are writing exam P or FM soon, go sign up for my study strategy tip emails because in those emails I'm sending you lots of study strategy advice, tips on how to pass your exam, tons of stuff about Excel and just getting a job and everything like that, but primarily it's about exam P and FM. So if you're writing those, sign up because you'll definitely want to know that information. I'll leave a link in the description below. Okay, so let's get into this video. Okay, the first question Eric has is, how many internships did you have before you got your first job, and how do you think those internships helped you in getting your first full-time job? So I went to University of Waterloo, as a lot of you already know, and in Waterloo there's actually a co-op program which is really helpful for students like me because instead of me having to go and look for an internship myself, the school will actually do all that for me. So they'll go out, they'll find employers that want students, and they bring all those employers in. The employers create a job description, and there's a whole database of different internship jobs that you can apply to. Now, these aren't all actuarial jobs. They're for all the students that are in a co-op program, but there are some actuarial jobs there. So that's really awesome. If you are able to go to University of Waterloo, I definitely recommend it just because of that co-op program. From that co-op program, I was actually able to land 3 internships. 2 of them were actuarial, and one of them was not. It was in an insurance company, but it didn't really, it's not that it didn't help me in my actuarial career. It taught me a lot about working in an office and how to use Excel and stuff like that, but I didn't get as much experience related to the actuarial field from that position, obviously. So I'm not going to talk too much about that one, but that one was in IT, and I was basically updating a database of all the equipment and hardware and everything that was in the company. So what I would do is I would track whenever any equipment moved from one person to another, or if we got rid of some equipment, I'd take that out of the database, or I'd add new equipment in as it came in. And that really helped for a lot of reasons. Most of all, because we want to make sure that we are able to locate all our inventory, and we want to make sure that people aren't taking equipment that's not theirs and stealing it essentially. And yeah, it's obviously just good to make sure that a company knows where all its equipment is. Okay, and my second internship was an actuarial internship. This was an 8-month co-op term, and it was in a P&C company. So in this was actually my favorite internship. I was working with auto insurance, and I had 3 primary projects. So my first project there was actually based around ordering MVRs and the cost associated with them, and we wanted to see if the cost that we were incurring by ordering those MVRs was actually helping us. Was it a financially good decision? So an MVR is a motor vehicle report, and when an insurance company orders an MVR, the company that we order it from will give us back a whole bunch of data about the certain policyholder that we want this motor vehicle report for. And the information in that report will be everything about the driving record related to that policyholder. So we'll know of any accidents or any tickets that they've got. So this comes in really helpful because sometimes when people are applying for insurance, they don't tell the whole truth because they want to try to lower their insurance premiums. So when we order these MVRs and we compare them to what the applicant said, we often see that they are the same, but in some circumstances we'll see that they're different. So if we order an MVR for the driver and we see a difference, then we'll likely end up increasing their premiums because they didn't tell us something that they should have. Most of the time, though, they are the same, and in that case, we wouldn't have to increase the premium that we offer them. Remember, these are just applicants, so we haven't already set up an insurance policy or anything with them. They want insurance from us, so we are trying to figure out what we should charge them. So once we order the MVR, we might have to increase the premium that we thought that we would charge them. So the company in this situation wanted to compare and see if ordering these MVRs, which have a cost per MVR that you order, was actually outweighing the cost or the extra income that we were charging in premiums. Eventually, we found out that in some provinces, we weren't making a good decision financially because the MVRs were costing us more than the additional premiums that we were charging. Remember, I'm in Canada here, so I talk about provinces, but this is basically like a state in the United States. So yeah, so what we ended up doing was eventually cutting off the program in certain provinces where we found that this wasn't a good economical decision. Another project that I worked on there was a winter tire project. Now the company had goals for how many or what percent of their policyholders they wanted to have winter tires. And if you don't already know, in Canada, and I'm sure there's states that have the same kind of policy, but you get lower insurance, lower auto insurance premiums if you have winter tires because they're safer, you can stop quicker, and generally you'll get in fewer accidents if you have winter tires. So there's always a discount for people that have winter tires. So this company was aiming to have a certain percentage of their policyholders with winter tires, but we had no idea really whether that percentage was being met or not. So my job was to go and look into the system and determine whether we were meeting our goals. If we weren't, which ended up being the case, we had to figure out how we could gradually increase the number of people that were buying winter tires in order to decrease their insurance rates. Now, in an actuarial world, this is something that you'll have to deal with. You'll come along situations where you have to make recommendations to management about what you would do. So in this situation, if you have an idea of how you would personally recommend increasing the number of people with winter tires, put it in the comments. I'd love to hear what ideas you come up with. So the last thing I did at this internship was I looked at the characteristics of policyholders that make late payments. So we wanted to be able to somehow reduce the number of people that were making late payments. So what we had to do first was we had to determine what characteristics a policyholder has that would kind of imply or suggest that they're going to make late premium payments. So what we had to do was we had to collect all the policyholders that were frequently making late payments, and we had to analyze them, see if we could come up with any certain characteristics that might suggest to us that this is the type of policyholder that pays late. So once we were able to determine what kind of policyholders often pay late, we would put different things in place for those. So for example, we would suggest to these type of policyholders that they sign up for automatic withdrawals. This is just an example. It's not necessarily what the company did. I actually wasn't there long enough to see what they did, but something they could have done was offer lower premiums for people that sign up for automatic withdrawal, because then we would be pretty much guaranteed to get the money on time, and we could take a slightly lower premium just because of that extra reliability of the premium coming in on time. So that's one suggestion. If you have another one, you can definitely put it in the comments below. I'd like to hear it. Okay, so my next internship was at a life insurance company, and I was actually pretty lucky because I got experience in P&C as well as life insurance. So the life insurance one, it was a great internship, but it wasn't as interesting to me personally as the auto one. In the life insurance one, I was primarily doing two different projects. One was just to compare the data that was in one data set to a new data set. So at this time, they were going through a big transition of changing the software that was holding the database of policyholder information. So they were working on migrating everything from one database to another one. And one of my primary jobs there was to make sure that all the information was coming through as expected. And if it wasn't, then I'd have to report that back to the IT specialist, and they would have to figure out why that was happening. And the other thing I did there was I worked with a illustration tool, a retirement income illustration tool. So when a policyholder signs up for some kind of retirement benefit, they want to know what they can expect to get out of that benefit. So usually it's cash flows coming out every month or every year, and a policyholder will want to know how much they can invest into their annuity in order to get a certain amount of money back. This illustration tool would lay that all out for the policyholder, and my job was to make sure that that was kept up to date and that any new regulations that came into play during the past year were input into the illustration tool. Now this was in Excel, so this is where I primarily got all my experience with Excel and VBA, and I'm so glad I did, because that has really been one of the biggest benefits of an actuarial position, is having that Excel and VBA experience. I was able to apply it in so many other ways in my full-time job. Okay, I think that question, even though it was the first one, it's probably going to be the longest answer. So the next question is, how many actuarial exams did you have before you got your first internship? And you may have heard this in another video, but I actually didn't have any internships before, I actually didn't have any exams before I got my first internship. And I actually think I was pretty lucky with that. It's probably not something that happens very often, and I am talking about my actuarial internship. So I ended up passing 2 exams while I was in my first internship, and then I later got my second one with 2 exams passed. But yeah, my very first one, I didn't have any actuarial experience or actuarial exams, but I guess the interviewer just saw some potential in me, and I ended up getting that internship. Okay, the next question is, how did you get your internship positions? And I already talked about this a little bit. I was lucky enough to go to the University of Waterloo, and they have a great program there where they'll bring in tons of employers. You actually interview right on site, like on campus. Employers come to you. But the one downside is that there is tons of competition for these actuarial positions, because there's just so many students at Waterloo, and there's a limited number of actuarial employers, so there is a lot of competition. But that's how I got all 3 of my internships. And then my first actuarial job, which is in life insurance, was just by sending out resumes to jobs that were posted online. So I would recommend at least 1 internship. If you can get 2, that would be great. And in terms of actuarial exams, it really depends on where you're located. If you're in the US, usually 2 exams is good enough. 2 or 3. If you had 3, you'd be in a really good place, but 2 should be enough. If you're in Canada right now, students are graduating with 4 or 5 exams, so that's kind of what employers have come to expect. But something has changed very recently, and that is that you now have to decide whether you want to go the CAS route or the SOA route very early on. You have to decide by your 4th exam. So I kind of have a feeling that this might impact the number of exams that students are graduating with in Canada, because once you make that decision, you're kind of committing to either life insurance or P&C insurance. If you're interested in the differences between life insurance and property insurance, as well as CAS and SOA, I will leave a link in the description below this video so you can go check out more about that. Knowing that you have to make that decision so early on your 4th exam makes me think that students are probably going to stop writing at 3 exams until they get their first full-time job. At that time, they'll decide what route they want to go. So I'm thinking that the number of exams you need in order to get a job in Canada might start decreasing just because of that. Okay, next question is, under what circumstances would it be a good idea to get a master's in actuarial science? And I have a very simple answer for this: never. And I tried to think actually if there was a time when I thought a master's degree would come in useful, and I just really don't think there is a time, because employers, first of all, really don't care what your degree is. As long as you have a degree and you've passed exams, that's what employers are looking for. If you have technical skills on top of that and maybe an internship, you'd be in great shape. But they're not really concerned about whether you have an actuarial degree. And they're really not overly concerned about what kind of degree you have, as long as you have one. So I don't think that it's ever beneficial to go back for a master's in actuarial science. If you are looking to get into the career and you're just a little worried about your mathematical ability, there's so much online that you can look at for free, and it will take you so much less time than going back to school for a master's in actuarial science. Just don't do it. The next question is, what are the recommended computer skills or technical skills that someone should have if they're looking to become an actuary? And this is a really good question, because this is something that can really boost up your employability. So one that you'll want to have for sure is Excel experience. If you don't know how to use Excel, go learn it now. I will link in the description of this video three places where you can learn how to work and use Excel for free. VBA is also a really good thing to know, because VBA is basically like code that automates Excel. And if you're able to do that, you're going to be in really good shape for actuarial jobs, because a lot of the time, tools need to be made that automate processes in Excel. I'm sure you know by now that actuaries use Excel all the time, so being able to automate it so that you don't have to manually do tasks for hours can really help, and VBA is how to do that. Another good one that I think would be helpful, but I would definitely not suggest learning it before Excel and VBA, is Python. And maybe some people use R. I've never had to use R in any of my actuarial jobs. I did use SAS in my PNC internship, but that's the only time I ever used it. So if you have some coding experience, that's going to be really good on your resume. Next question is, do you think that school name plays a big part in the hiring process? Like, do actuarial employers really care about this school that you went to? And my answer is no. I don't think that they care at all, because as long as you show that you can pass exams, and once you have your degree in math or something related, they're going to know that you're competent to write at least the preliminary exams. So I don't think that you have to worry about what school you go to. I don't think one is necessarily going to put you in a better position to get jobs and stuff. But one thing that I will say is that if you go to a school that has a co-op program like the University of Waterloo does, that will really help you in getting internships, which ultimately make you more employable later on. So that's something to think about when you're deciding on your school. Okay, next question is, what are some classes that would be beneficial for someone to take while they're in college in order to get into the actuarial career? And there are quite a few different courses that would be really good. First is anything in business, anything in statistics, anything in finance, and anything in computer science. I highly recommend you get some exposure to all four of those topics while you're in school. So if your degree and your master's or whatever you're doing in school doesn't involve you getting experience in all four of those areas, that was business, finance, statistics, and computer science, then you should definitely consider taking electives in those kind of courses, because they're going to help you a lot in your actuarial career. And it's going to be knowledge that you can apply to exams and to your work. So I definitely wouldn't miss out on those opportunities while you're in school. You have to take courses anyway, so you may as well take ones that are going to help you. Okay, next question is one that you've probably wondered yourself. What salary should you expect on your first actuarial job? So I actually just happened to write an article about this recently, about the salary that you should expect if you have 2 exams passed. I will link to that in the description of this video, but that goes through what you should expect if you're a life insurance actuary, a health insurance actuary, PNC, or pensions. it kind of varies depending on what industry you go into. But if we assume you have 2 exams by the time you graduate, and that's what you're looking for a job as, with 2 exams, then somewhere between $50,000 and $70,000 a year is where you're going to expect to land. Now, pension jobs usually tend to be on the lower side, and PNC jobs tend to be on the higher side. So you can check out that article if you want more details, but somewhere between $50,000 and $70,000 a year seems like a pretty good estimate of what you can expect as an entry-level actuary. And the last question is, what industries do actuaries work for? And as you may know, actuaries work in so many different areas, but there are some that are much more common. So I kind of went through these in the last question too. But there's life insurance, which is obviously working with life insurance, and P&C insurance, which is property and casualty. So with that, you'll be dealing with automobile and property insurance and anything else that people own that's really expensive. And then there's health insurance, and with that, you'll primarily be working with employee benefits like dental benefits and drug plans and stuff like that. And there's pensions, where you'll be working with employer pension plans. Now, that industry is getting smaller and smaller, so it's probably not something that you'd want to start in if you could avoid it, but it's an actuarial job and it would definitely give you great experience, so I wouldn't say don't take it, but if you have other options, then you probably want to avoid it if possible. But actuaries work all over the place. They work in schools, they work in the government. There are endless amounts of areas where actuaries can be beneficial, and I actually think that there's just going to be more and more areas where actuaries are used and helpful because of their knowledge of risk and finance and business and statistics. They just have such a wide range of business related knowledge that I think actuaries are going to continue to grow and become used even more. Okay, so that is the end of all the questions that Eric had for me. I hope that you, as an aspiring actuary, has been able to take something from this video. And just remember, if you're writing exam P or FM, go sign up for those study strategy tips and advice emails, and I will be seeing you again in the next video. Bye!